This story will cover from then to now and next, all about change, how to turn losers into winners. The harvest mouse, one of Britain's least seen little mammals. One weighs the same as a 2p coin, so here's 4p worth. A pair that we'll follow from spring to autumn in a beautiful fragment of British countryside. It's an old mill and still working at Sturminster Newton in rural Dorset on the River Stour. Our other stars in this seasonal show are the swallows, with a pair that returns to the same spot in the mill every year. Whereas the harvest mouse is a resident in a changing world, that of the swallow changes from England to South Africa every year on a journey of 8,000 miles. From spring to summer, the harvest mouse and the swallow will share the world around Sturminster Newton Mill. But in fact, this is a hugely diverse place. You could say it's 7 worlds around one watermill. And this is the human world, one that planet Earth has increasingly become, all around are human items in a human habitat. And the question is, how much can our two characters, the harvest mouse and the swallow, adapt to human impact and change? But the swallows should be safe up here, and soon they'll be starting their nest. Our guide is Peter Loosemore, dedicated enthusiast at the mill.
This is in effect the engine room of our mill. Nowadays we're driven by a turbine which is down here underneath the water, and so when I come in the mornings I turn this wheel here, opens the sluice gate, water from behind the mill comes through, swirls around in a huge casing, and as it swirls around in the casing it pushes blades around, and that's what drives the whole mill. As soon as I start that, every machine in the mill starts working.
Here you see all 7 worlds, and we'll explore them in detail.
Firstly, we take the grain to the top of the mill because it comes in looking like this. It has straw and husk, and occasionally we find stones, snail shells, birds' feathers and so on can all come in from in front of the combine harvester, all gathered up. It's taken to the top of the mill to drop through a thing called a winnower, and that winnower, partly by blowing and partly by sieving, takes out all the rubbish and gives us some nice clean grain. This is the resulting grain which falls onto the down onto this bottom floor here into a sack over on our side. We still have 1 or 2 husks in here. Not too worried about those because they simply add a little bit of extra fibre to the flour, and that of course is a good thing. So that finishes up on this floor at the bottom of the mill, having come down through gravity feed through the winnow. We then take it back up to the top of the mill, drop it as nice clean grain into the millstones, and this is the flour that we make. So this is a stone ground wholemeal flour.
Early millers were sometimes dishonest. In the 16th century, one must find 6p for overcharging customers. That's different money at different times. 1,000 years of milling, that's natural power. Appropriately, the world of the harvest mouse is about seeds and cereal, fruits and berries, depending on the time of year. They'll also feed on insects, flowers and green shoots in spring, which is now. The teasels flowered last year, and their dead heads are a prickly spot for an adventurous harvest mouse, one of a pair looking for a nesting site of a rather special design. A completely different arrangement is happening in the human world of the swallow pair. Here two worlds connect, with the swallow in the mill and the harvest mouse always on the lookout. A small rodent makes a tasty snack for an owl, a hawk, a stoat or a cat that's very much part of the human world. A man-made perch. Glorious mud. A romantic tune, well, sort of. It has to be just right for the job. Back to the mill in the usual spot. With all this water around the mill, it's a good place to go fishing. Humans need the right equipment and lots of patience. So do others with their prey in mind. The swallows make their nest of mud pellets and bits of plant material, a surprisingly firm structure, well attached to the beams. But this nest from last year is already taken over. And out there sunbathing is the owner and builder of a very different home, a wren. Both the action and the spring are now hotting up, and soon the pool will be a hunting ground for the locals. It's another world, the sky. Meanwhile, back to that other very different world, the land, with its fields and farmland. A changing landscape which can really drastically affect the harvest mice and their nest. They'll weave it with great skill and may use grassy field margins, reed beds and crops, though that can be a problem. Harvest mice breed before they are 1 year old and can produce 3 to 7 litters a year. Their mating season is between May and October, but can continue on to December depending on the weather. The gestation period is 19 days and the young are weaned by 15 days. Litters can range from 1 to 8 babies. So if their populations are hit by changing farming methods, they may be able to recover if some are left, and perhaps they can adapt to other habitats. Adaptation is the name of the game in these changing times, and that may include the climate. The swallow pair have a new mud nest and lined it with feathers. Not quite as prolific as the harvest mice, but both worlds can be dangerous out there. More eggs on the way. Dragonflies in tandem laying on another world which almost surrounds the watermill on the River Stour. Precision flying to produce larvae offspring that will hatch and live below the surface. They and their lives will be very different from the two adults that laid them from above, the world of the air. Flying insects are food for the swallows, and the world of plants feed them. Another fisher trying his luck with the right equipment and lots of patience, just like the man across the pond. No luck. Herons really like eels, but they're not easy prey. Slippery, strong and flexible from one world to another. They can travel over land, especially when rainy. They cross the Atlantic to breed. Their numbers have decreased enormously, but at least this one survived this time. At least until the next drama. The heron continues his aerial world circuit around the farmed fields that occupy so much of the English countryside. It's where what goes on the land world that will probably end up in the water world as runoff. And that affects plants and dependent insects which the aerial swallows catch on the wing. All connected, and to us too, even via the products of the mill, the result of the human harvest. Plant life is effectively all life, dependent on clean fresh water. The wild plants by the mill are a crucial part of this lovely place, like the teasel, whose seasons will follow to that spiky stage. Lady's smock is a sign of spring low down. Above, another world, that of the trees, catkins, which bumblebees can agitate with a special buzz that shakes off the pollen on offer, that can then be collected. Perhaps not bees, but smaller insects over the pool are prey to those aerial world hunters, the swallows, conveniently based at their nest nearby. That other nest in the rough grass is also the scene of much activity. Baby harvest mice may leave the nest a bit too early for safety and start to disperse. The response of the distressed adults is to try and return them to the nest, or at least a place out of harm's way. Lots of confusion, and a predator could strike at any moment when there's so much distracting the whole family. But here's a solution. Still too young to eat hard stuff, the mother's milk is a draw. A drag which leads to safety. Time for a rest in the nest where their babies were born. Still on the world of the land, but not far from the world of the water, is another family, the mute swan. Semi-domesticated compared with the other truly wild species, buicks and hoopers. Normally 5 to 7 eggs, but up to 12 recorded, with both sexes incubating and sharing domestic duties. It's very modern. Now it's time to enter that other important world to all swans, water. And don't forget they can fly well and far, so become part of the aerial world too. But they're mostly at home on water, or under it. And that's where there are actually 2 worlds to look at, above and below. Just looking at it, you might not realise that there's a skin on it. Surface tension. It supports, literally, a whole community. Not only do pond skaters float, but they row, joining whirligig beetles paddling along. Skaters use their front legs to grasp their prey, the middle legs as oars, and the hind legs as rudders. Quite a machine, as we'll see later. Their neighbours, the whirligig beetle, just one of a mere 400,000 known species of beetle, have 2 pairs of eyes for seeing above and below the surface. They can ride out of the water and dive below it. Quite a package. The very versatile whirligig can hold his breath and so join another world below that surface film in the calmer parts of the mill pool. But it's not that calm. Tadpoles are vegans, grazing on algae. So are snails, themselves hosting algae for fast-growing tadpoles on their way to becoming frogs in another world, its amphibian territory. Calm vegans. Lively newt, another amphibian. Quite a wrestler. Even attacking its own tadpoles. It's an underwater jungle down here with a serious, well-equipped predator, an extendable mask, big eyes. It can pick off tiny water fleas and even a fairly big tadpole. Tadpoles do seem to be on the receiving end, and it doesn't stop here. Back to the surface again, where below to up there operator is hunting. Upside down, a water boatman or back swimmer. It can inflict a painful bite. And this is what that grim dragonfly larva hatched into after a long time living down below in that other world. And this is what can happen to any surviving tadpoles as they face the dangers in the world ashore. Grass snakes are very aquatic and hunt tadpoles and frogs. Well, that's surface tension. You can see what they mean by surface tension, the skin of the mill pool where two worlds meet. We've had nesting harvest mice, a farmland world. Nesting swallows, a man and air world. Nesting swans, land and water world. A passing Ospreys' eye view of 7 worlds and 1 watermill. Trees. Human. Below water. Farmland. Above water. Plants. And the sky. Down to another nest where slow and faster currents connect. There's yet another nest down there. It's that time of year when male sticklebacks are maintaining their nests and hoping to pull. A female, apparently not distracted by the skaters overhead. And now for the eggs in that underwater nest. Whether it's nests or cases, vegetation is important to fish and caddisfly larvae alike. This one will hatch and leave its underwater world for the one above. The mayfly larvae, or nymphs, are hatching too, after up to 3 years below the surface. Not all make it, but thousands probably do in a good year. There are traps in the sky, death for a mayfly. And a meal for a spider, well worth the wait. Up and away, they'll mate and lay eggs, producing adults again up to 3 years later. That's unless they get eaten alive by, say, a perch. Another perch for a kingfisher. Maybe perch fry. This whole community can tell us how clean the river is, who's winning and who's losing. Kingfishers are doing quite well, not hit so often in winter when the water used to freeze over every year. Climate change may be helping them. Other fishermen, like otters, have done well too and now thrive in nearly all counties of Britain. Crossing roads and visiting fishing ponds are problems. It's us who have tempted them in and should protect those places. The fish hawk, the osprey, is passing through in his aerial world. Fish are there, but difficult to catch in this turbulent underwater world of the sluice. This is transparent green energy that migrating fish have to overcome. They do so due to their shape, fins, and personal power. The tiny creatures they feed on are fuel for these elegant travellers. And of course, if a heron, an otter, an osprey, or even a man catches one, well, sometimes, that energy passes up the food chain to drive flight or swimming ability. And of course it can drive a turbine, a millstone, and feed us too. Upstream from the mill and the noisy activity is a quiet place, where the swan family is busy in their own gentle way. For their cygnets they stir up the bottom, where pike lurk, and eels slither away. Topside, the parents prune the trees, and the cygnets take it easy, learning how to preen. They're surrounded by a great variety of plants, both below the surface and all around. Teasels are coming into flower. Good for the insects, bumbling onto yellow iris, a true sign of spring. So are these, bridging two worlds, and the floating water lilies' leaves do the same. From the canopy of the tree world down to the fields nearby. That's where the young harvest mice are exploring the ground vegetation, checking by chewing. Nearby, the pregnant mother, again. It could be up to 8 babies, with several more litters later on. But many young are taken by predators, and another threat could be that of intensive farming. Man's world can smash theirs, and combined harvesters feed the mill, and ultimately us. Visitors are welcome and can enjoy the wildlife all around. That includes the local residents. Grey wagtails. The male with the black bib is searching the mossy roof covering for flies. That's his mate. No one seems to know why they keep on wagging, possibly a sort of camouflage by running water. Sturmiston Newton Watermill on the River Stour in Dorset has been in business for 1,000 years and counting, a centre for people and wildlife. Just how long and exactly where those other fly enthusiasts will set up home, we don't know. But now they come back every year, all the way from South Africa, to do this. They're a demanding family. From 6 eggs, 4 hatched, and it remains to be seen how many will survive. It may depend on the food supply. It's hard work. And what goes in comes out, well, sort of, decorating what's below. They're already wing stretching, getting ready for the long flight, with just bits of baby fluff left. There's some 860,000 breeding territories of swallows in the UK. So that's a huge number of insects caught on the wing and delivered every few minutes. Take aim. First to go, 3 to go. Well, literally. Right across the country, waves of swallows are heading south. One left, as if contemplating, resting on those mud pellets placed there 3 months ago. And also back at the nest, those tiny residents, Europe's smallest rodent, also being helped elsewhere by the provision of tennis balls plus access hole, a kind of nest ball, not box. They're resting after a very busy summer in their world of the rough grass, left uncut for them by the farmer. Tree world. Up in the canopy, a speckled wood butterfly is also part of the aerial world, spreading his wings in the late summer sunshine. Leaves are starting to fall. Autumn bounty. Good time to build up its tiny body for the winter. Its prehensile tail acts like a fifth limb, with neat hands for grasping amongst the rosehip and bramble thorns. The speckled wood butterfly is grounded, but its camouflage may help. Harvest mice do eat insects. They're little carnivores too. But perhaps in this case, the butterfly's eye spots may warn off the nosy predator who's got his eyes open for the next chance. Down by the river perhaps. World of the whirligig beetles, sliding on the flowing water tension. And a water skater skating past, looking for a meal and joining the crowd on their leaf rafts. And here comes lunch. The skaters operate like vultures on a kill, sucking the fly dry. But this is not the Serengeti. It's Dorset, England. Moorhens are bred in their watery world, and a parent is getting help from a teenager, from the first brood. It's unusual, perhaps. This so-called helper feeds small chicks from the parent's second brood. And this beautiful piece of the English countryside needs all the help it can get. 7 worlds at one watermill. After the State of Nature reports in 2013 and 2016, experts from over 70 wildlife and government agencies joined to present the clearest picture to date of the status of our species across land and sea. The 2019 report reveals 41% of UK species have declined, 26% have increased, and 33% little change since 1970. Some winners, some losers. But can we turn losers into winners? Well, as long as young swallows can catch enough insects in their aerial world, and there are enough diverse plants to feed those insects, and humans learn how fragile planet Earth is, then the young swallows, on their own, will fly those 8,000 miles into a better future. And those local stay-at-home harvest mice will continue breeding like, mice. A real mouseful. Please, let these wonders never cease.